What would ancient humans do if it rained for an entire week? Today, most of us would simply stay indoors. We would close the windows, turn on the television, order food, and wait for the weather to improve. But prehistoric humans had no houses with waterproof roofs, no central heating, no dry supermarkets, and no weather forecast telling them when the storm would end. For them, continuous rain was not just an inconvenience, it was a serious survival problem. Rain changed everything. It made the ground cold and slippery. It soaked clothing, damaged tools, weakened shelters, spoiled firewood, raised rivers, and made it harder to find food. So, how did ancient people survive when the rain refused to stop? The first priority was shelter. A cave was not simply a place to hide, it was a survival system. A good cave could block the wind, reduce the rain, protect a fire, and provide a dry place for sleeping. But not every cave was safe. Some caves had low entrances that trapped smoke. Others were too exposed to wind. Some were located near streams that could quickly become dangerous during heavy rain. Ancient humans had to understand the landscape. They needed to know where water flowed, which rocks were stable, and which parts of a cave remained dry. Sometimes they improved a shelter themselves. They could place branches across an exposed entrance, stretch animal hides over wooden poles, fill gaps with grass, or build low stone barriers to redirect water. The goal was not to create a modern house. The goal was to create one dry, protected space where the group could survive until the storm passed. Inside that shelter, the next challenge was cold. Rain removes body heat quickly. Wet clothing becomes heavy and uncomfortable, while cold stone floors draw warmth away from the body. For prehistoric humans, staying warm was not about comfort, it was about avoiding dangerous exposure. This made fire one of the most valuable technologies in human history. A fire provided warmth, light, protection, and a way to prepare food. But during continuous rain, keeping a fire alive required constant attention. Wet wood burns poorly. Smoke fills the cave. A sudden leak can extinguish the flames in seconds. People could protect the fire beneath a rock overhang or inside a sheltered part of the cave. They could place dry tinder in containers made from bark, hide, or plant material. They could cover burning embers with ash so that heat remained trapped overnight. One person might watch the fire while others searched for better fuel. The group would look for dead branches protected beneath trees, dry roots, fallen bark, or resin-rich wood that could burn more easily. Once the fire was burning, it also became a drying station. Wet clothing, grass, plant fibers, and food could be placed near the heat. Everything had to be positioned carefully. Too far away, and it would stay wet. Too close, and it could burn. Ancient survival depended on small decisions repeated over and over again. The rain also created another serious danger: flooding. A cave that seemed safe at the beginning of a storm could become dangerous several days later. Water could enter through cracks in the ceiling or flow across the floor from the entrance. If the group had stored tools, bedding, or food in a low area, those supplies could be ruined. That is why people needed to observe the cave constantly. They watched the direction of water. They listened for changes in dripping sounds. They moved belongings to higher ground. They dug shallow channels or used stones to redirect small streams away from the fire and sleeping area. This was not random activity. It was early environmental engineering. Ancient people were learning how to reshape a small part of their surroundings to make life more secure. Staying dry also required useful tools. Stone tools could cut branches, scrape hides, shape wooden stakes, and prepare plant materials. A sharp stone edge could turn raw material into shelter equipment. Rope was especially valuable. By twisting together long plant fibers, people could create strong cord. That cord could hold a shelter together, tie branches into frames, secure bundles, repair clothing, or create simple traps. Making rope was slow work, but it transformed what humans could build. A person could use cord to connect materials that would otherwise fall apart. A group could create a stronger shelter with fewer branches. They could hang food above the damp ground and keep tools organized. Even simple bedding made a major difference. Sleeping directly on wet stone or mud caused the body to lose heat throughout the night. A thick layer of grass, leaves, reeds, or other plant material created insulation between the body and the ground. Inside a dry cave, bedding could also be replaced, moved, and dried near the fire. A warm sleeping area helped people conserve energy during a period when food was already harder to find. And that brings us to the next problem: food. Rain did not necessarily stop the food supply, but it changed the way people obtained it. Open grasslands became muddy, paths disappeared, streams became dangerous to cross. Plants became harder to identify beneath the water and mud. Long-distance hunting could become risky, especially if visibility was poor. So people had to depend more heavily on food that could be found close to shelter. They could gather roots, berries, mushrooms, leaves, seeds, and other edible plants. They could search beneath wet soil for underground foods. They could collect small animals and insects that remained near their nests or colonies. In parts of Africa, termite mounds could provide an important source of nutrition. Termites are small, but they are rich in protein and can be gathered in large numbers. Their colonies also remain in the landscape even when rain changes the surface around them. For a group trapped near a cave, nearby food sources could mean the difference between waiting safely and taking a dangerous journey into the storm. Food also had to be protected. Roots and plants could be placed near the fire to dry. Gathered foods could be stored in containers or suspended from the cave wall. Portions could be prepared slowly so that nothing was wasted. A long rainy period required planning. If the group consumed everything immediately, the final days of the storm could become desperate. But survival was not only about warmth, shelter, tools, and food. It was also about cooperation. Several people could accomplish more together than one person could accomplish alone. Some watched the fire. Others repaired the shelter. Others collected water, gathered plants, made tools, or cared for children. Children could learn by watching adults twist rope, prepare food, shape stones, and maintain the fire. Older members of the group could preserve knowledge about the landscape, the safest caves, the best plants, and the signs of changing weather. A rainy week also created long periods of forced downtime. People could not always travel or hunt. So they repaired clothing, sharpened tools, made cord, prepared bedding, and worked on simple art. They could tell stories, teach skills, care for children, and strengthen relationships around the fire. In that sense, the cave was more than a shelter. It was a workshop, a kitchen, a classroom, a bedroom, and a meeting place. The rain may have trapped people in one location, but it also encouraged the development of routines and cooperation. Eventually, the storm would begin to weaken. The clouds would break apart. Water would stop flowing across the cave floor. Smoke would rise into clear air. People would step outside carefully, checking the ground before moving across the landscape. The world would look different. Streams would be wider. Paths would be hidden. Plants would be bent by wind and rain. Some shelters would need to be repaired completely. But the group would already know what to do. They would collect dry wood, rebuild damaged structures, inspect their tools, search for food, and prepare for the possibility that another storm could arrive. Ancient humans did not survive long periods of rain because they were comfortable. They survived because they adapted. They used caves, fire, plant fibers, stone tools, food storage, bedding, observation, and cooperation. Every small action mattered. A protected ember could become warmth. A twisted fiber could become a shelter. A layer of grass could become a bed. A nearby termite mound could become food. A group gathered around a fire could become a survival network. So, when ancient humans faced rain for an entire week, they did not simply sit and wait. They worked. They repaired. They shared. They watched the fire, studied the water, protected their food, and prepared for whatever came next. For most of human history, survival was not about controlling nature. It was about understanding nature well enough to live through its worst days.